Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Face in your face. Face in your face.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron. Now, for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with this channel or are watching this channel for the first time, the reason why it is called Uncommon Sense, because here on this platform, we discuss everyday issues where we try to find logical solutions. But not everyone uses logic. So for that reason, it is called Uncommon Sense. I also have a much smaller YouTube channel called Latina Diaspora, where I discuss issues pertaining to Latinos in the United States. The link to the channel is in the description. I want to let everybody know that I'm currently live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And the subscriber mode has been enabled for the first 5 minutes. Meaning, if you're not a subscriber and if you wish to enter comments in the chat, you will need to have been a subscriber for these 5 minutes. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all those who have already subscribed to the channel. Whether you've been a supporter from the very beginning or just recently joined, I really appreciate your love and continued support. I also want to give a huge shout out to all those who follow me on social media, as well as those who allow me to enter into your devices, and those who watch from the clouds, including the haters. So, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you have not done so already, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, like, and set the bell notifications to all. So, therefore, whenever I do produce content, you will have the opportunity to catch it live or catch it on the playback. So, as you can see by the thumbnail, tonight's topic is open discussion. Now, you're probably wondering, what do we do in open discussion? Basically, I will share my views regarding several topics. And of course, the audience, that is the people in the chat, will have an opportunity to opine regarding each topic. Also, if there's anything that you wish for me to talk about, I will do my best to comply. There might be certain things where I may not have a great deal of knowledge, and I will be transparent and say so. Also, there might be a couple of topics which are basically a little bit too controversial to be discussed here. Um, I try to maintain a relatively calm, tranquil, chill platform. And there might be certain topics where it gets a little bit too dicey. So, with that being said, before I forget, let me just state for the record that the link to join the panel has been given. Should anyone wishes to hit that link and to opine regarding anything that we will discuss, they may do so. May I also remind you that if I never seen you before, if I never heard from you before, I will insist that you come up in the backstage to make sure that no one flashes anything inappropriate, which will cause the people of YouTube to take down this stream. Once you've been vetted, and once I see that you're not a vicious troll or you're not here to cause any disruption, you will be allowed to join the panel. I do not obligate anyone to come up. That I leave to your discretion. Okay? Because I do know for a fact that there are people who do not feel comfortable coming up, and then those who don't care either way. So, the first thing we're going to discuss tonight is next week's schedule. Okay. Basically, next week's schedule is going to be a repeat of this week. Now, I already posted this the streams which I will be airing for this channel. Monday, I will be discussing the so-called controversy regarding the new guide rules and regulations that Carnival Cruise had posted. Okay, and of course, that's been causing a lot of chatter in social media, particularly by certain members of the Aboriginal community, claiming to be discrimination against them. So I will discuss the new guidelines, and then I'll leave it up to you whether discrimination or just people try to bring some people, make sure that the passengers who paid a good chunk of money, several hundreds of dollars at least, will be able to enjoy their time on the cruise ship without having to go through disruptive behavior and things of that nature. Tuesday, I will discuss another Christian topic, which is love, a Christian concept. Now, of course, I have to give the normal the usual disclaimer, which is the following. I am not trying to compel anyone to embrace Christianity. I also understand there might be people who are not Christians that may watch this stream. Okay? All I ask that you please keep an open mind. You don't have to agree with what I'm going to discuss, and you have a right to your opinion. Thursday, I'll have another discussion, another live on my other channel, Latina Diaspora. The topic for that stream will be announced either Monday or Tuesday, and usually I keep it. I'll air it on the Thursday, and then the following day, which is Friday, is another episode of open discussion. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that there's been quite a bit of chatter on social media, but particularly on TikTok, regarding the changes when it comes to SNAP, public assistance, Medicaid, and Section 8. Now you have certain individuals who feel entitled are devoting endless hours on TikTok, complaining that they're being deprived of government services, and that it is our responsibility to take care of these people. No, okay. Now, if you as a okay, let me make this perfectly clear. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if you as a, and I use the term loosely, woman decided to become a single mother for 5 and 6, 7 children, not because the father, not because the husband passed away, not because you was a victim of abuse or you're being SA or what have you, but simply decided, you know what, I'm going to open my legs indiscriminately and without any protection, and I'm going to have a whole bunch of kids by different men and what have you. Don't expect us to support you and your insanity, yes, your lifestyle. Okay. When it comes to social services like SNAP, which is food stamps, like public assistance, which is welfare, Medicaid, which is medical coverage for those who are poor, and Section 8. Those programs were specifically designed to provide temporary assistance to those who need it. Now, what has happened is you have families of two, three, or even four generations on public assistance, and they have no, they there has not been anyone that actually gotten a full-time job or know what it is to be self-reliant. Okay. Now, there is this one, okay, I'm going to use the term Lucy, woman, that she's been appearing on TikTok. So let me just give you the scenario. Is a woman, she has six children, single mom. She receives, I think it was $2,000 a month in food stamps, and I think $3,000 a month in public assistance. Now I see we have a guest. So let me, before I invite my guest, let me just state for the record that the views of those who appear on the panel are not necessarily those of the host. Any attempt to copy the material without the consent of the host is prohibited. By appearing on the call, you waive your rights to your image. Some of the views that people hold may consider offensive to some viewers. If you do not like the content, you can block the channel. And now we're going to bring in our guest. Good evening.
Well, from Don Armando's live stream to yours, because I just got off of his. See what's going on over here.
Okay. So how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, Jose. Just a little tired. What about yourself?
Okay. Well, I'm doing fine. Today was a bit stressful day because in my job working in social services, I dealt with a very uncooperative individual.
Wow, well, Jose, with the amount of patience you have and the kindness you demonstrate, I'm pretty sure you handled it accordingly, despite how stressful it may have been.
Yeah.
Because you've been through a lot, especially on here, and I'm pretty sure you've definitely dealt with it a lot on your job.
Yeah, it kind of gave me thought about not waiting 2 years to retire though.
So that's going to go by really fast, and then next thing you know, they're going to have a lot of freedom.
Yes. So we're having another night of open discussion. So right now I'm talking about what's going on in social media where certain I hate to use the term content creators are making content complaining about the changes when it comes to SNAP, public assistance, Medicaid, and Section 8.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one Now I don't know if this person's real or if this is just a skit. But this is a woman. Okay, now I use the term loosely, woman. She is a single mom of 6 children. She received, I think it was $2,000 a month in food stamps, about $3,000 a month in public assistance. Received $950 per month per child on SSI, and is on Section 8. And she's been notified that her benefits will terminate. So she has gone through devoting time and energy on social media, complaining about it and claiming that it is the taxpayer responsibility to take care of her and her kids. And to add insult and injury, this person, she claims to have over 200,000 followers on TikTok, and she has set up a GoFundMe fund to help her, to get fed, and no one has contributed. Your thoughts?
I think I know the woman you're talking about. We're not going to say her name because we already know that there's a no name policy on here.
Correct.
But my thoughts on that is the fact that she is very entitled and spoiled.
You don't say.
And got way too comfortable freeloading off the government, because that stuff is meant to be very temporary until you are able to get back on your feet, which can hopefully come by soon.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is about. Like I said, by the way, there was even a time where I needed it, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, there was. There was actually a time where I needed it until I got back on my feet to where I didn't know. Not only did I not need it anymore, but I didn't even want it. I ended up passing it on to somebody who was in need.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then also, like, after a while, they actually will terminate your benefits anyway, at least in California and in the state of Nevada, because they want you to work at the end of the day. Yeah. So the way it works here is that if you're on it for a certain amount of time, they will get you off of it after a certain period, because at the end of the day, you got to work, period. There's nothing around that, though. But if you think you can be like a mooch off the government, you're mistaken.
Isn't there a verse in the Bible, in the New Testament, when it talks about those who don't work are not entitled to eat?
Yes. You don't work, you don't eat. Yes.
Okay. In case there are some, I use the term loosely, Christians are talking about, well, we need to be compassionate about these people. Really? Look, we're talking about people who are not only self-entitled, but have made poor choices and then expects others to bail it out, time in, time out.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And before anybody who may be listening is like, well, Jordan, aren't you going out there and talking to people in those positions who are like homeless or have been homeless for quite some time or whatever? Yes, I am. And I'm still doing it too. Hell, guess what? On the Vegas Strip, there's this homeless guy who is a vet. And you want to know what I'm going to do, Jose? I'm going to treat him out to a nice, luxurious restaurant and have him eat whatever he wants. And it'll be on my dollar. Yep. All in the name of our
what the ops.
What?
Yeah, you know what the ops are going to say.
that I'm harassing homeless people. Yeah.
Again.
Yes, exactly. But guess what? Although, and not only that, but even me and a good brother in Christ, we helped out this 71-year-old disabled homeless woman who is battling with cellulitis in her foot, and we treated her to McDonald's. It's the McDonald's that's right beside the Circus Resort on the Las Vegas Strip. Yep. But however, I did refer her out to one of my teams who run, I'm not going to say the name of the facility, but it is out here in Vegas, because ultimately speaking, people I talk to and minister to, the whole purpose behind that is to not only plant seeds, but to also inspire those to have a change of heart. But except I'm doing it with love, righteousness, and dignity too. And they can truly feel that. And then that way, those seeds gives them a kind of inspiration to open up their hearts more to the Lord, because the Lord doesn't want us to stay the same. Because let me tell you this, bro. The last homeless woman I spoke to, you want to know how long she's been out there on the streets for?
Please tell us.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to say her name, so I'm going to have to nickname her. So I'm going to nickname her Mimi, okay? So Mimi, so Mimi told me that she's been out there on the streets for 7 years. And so, 7 years. And so when me and Mimi spoke for literally 2.5 hours straight, I hope that could be a sign that it's time to advance, It's time to embark upon a transformative journey that could ultimately lead to her getting off of the streets, by the way. Yeah. Now, it may take some time, though, because, look, homelessness in general, it's a very complex issue, okay? And it's going to take some time. It does take time. But it's pretty clear that the Lord used me to plant the seeds, and then he will do everything else. And it truly left a great impact on her too, to where she told me to help her stand up so she can hug me. Even though I'll tell you this again, I know the ops are going to say something, but I don't ask for people to hug me. They ask. They do it. I don't ask for that. I don't expect it. They ask.
Okay.
People, but then people are going to think what they want to think. They're going to be like, "Oh, Jordan is harassing and taking advantage of homeless women because of a power imbalance." I already know what people are going to say.
And that you're trying to gain access to the box.
Yeah. I already know.
You know what?
Okay.
We laugh about it, but it's like it just kind of shows what is the mindset of certain troubled souls.
And it's okay. I love them too. But needless to say, everything I do is supposed to bring inspiration and hope and redemption to people, though, because look, a lot of those people, they really need to experience God's redemptive love. And if he can use you to spread his redemptive love, that'll plant the seeds from there. And then next thing you know, you never know, probably in the next year, Mimi will probably be off the streets.
Yes.
And then also the 71-year-old disabled homeless woman who, unfortunately does not really have like any family. Because believe it or not, guys, we do have some homeless seniors out here who are old enough to be my grandmother, though. Because look, next month I'm going to be 33, and I've come across plenty of homeless people who are old enough to be both my mom and my dad, and even my grandparent too. And the disabled homeless woman in a wheelchair that me and my good friend Eddie helped out. She's old enough to be both of our grandmothers. But yeah, Jose, out here you do have homeless people who are even older than you.
Oh, I'm sure.
Mhm.
I'm sure. I mean, look, let me tell you something. Unless you know what it is to be homeless, you really don't know what they go. You really don't know what they go through, and it's so easy to be judgmental and things of that nature. And I know I've said this before, but we gotta put down this disclaimer. We're not what's this condoning illicit activity. However, what my friend is doing is reaching out to people who are very vulnerable, who are hurt, who've gone through trauma, which led them to the extent for them that doing the things that they're doing now.
Yeah, because those parts of town where I go to, you don't really have many people who are spreading God's redemptive love, to be honest. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't any, but you really don't. So you notice how, Jose, like on YouTube, you have like a lot of those secular content creators who are just interviewing people, asking questions and la di da.
Yeah.
Now, I will never discredit what they do. I follow them too. I think they do some wonderful work. But here's the thing here. They're not really talking about God's redemptive love at all. They're not really, trying to plant those seeds. But the difference here is that, like I do that, and it's a huge difference. But hey, Gigi, good
Hey,
afternoon.
Gigi. Good evening. Thank you for stopping by.
Good evening. So yeah, that's a
Please
bit of a
continue.
difference. There's a huge difference.
Yeah. 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 It is a
Not
big
saying I'm
difference.
better.
Yeah.
Not saying I'm better or worse. Okay, I approach this
No.
very humbly, but I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with saying that there's a huge difference between what I'm doing and what those other secular content creators are doing. A huge
Yeah.
difference, and it's leaving a different impact too.
Yeah, because basically it's more like, okay, folks, here are the homeless. Okay, folks, here are the ladies of the night. Let's go and talk to them and ask them why do they do what they do. Okay, you are meeting these people where they're at, and you're not being judgmental. You are illustrating God's love.
Exactly, because even just the couple few days ago with the disabled homeless woman who was 71 years old, I knew
Mhm.
exactly how to handle that. But this is what I told her at the end. After me and a good brother in Christ bought her some food at McDonald's. Like I said, I did refer her out to one of my facilities out here in Las Vegas. I'm not saying the name of it though, in the team.
Okay,
Protect it. But I'll tell you in the background. I'll tell you in the private chat. But
that's perfectly
yes,
fine.
but at this facility, we do have some resources. There are showers, and we do allow them to maybe cool down a bit, have some toiletries too, and then also they're able to wash their stuff too. And I think we may have some services that could refer them out to programs that specifically help out senior citizens still, because my concern is, yes, dude, her age, which is why I'm going to actually ask my pastor this Sunday about whether there are any branches within our facility that can actually help out somebody in her position, because she's even old enough to be my pastor's mother, dude, because my pastor just turned 50 and she's 71. I'm concerned, dude. And she
Yeah,
told me that she pretty much sleeps outside while she's dealing with cellulitis in her foot in a wheelchair. I'm concerned, dude. I'm concerned, Jose. It
but
bothers me.
you know something. One thing that people they don't realize is that the elderly they have a lot of things to overcome. First of all, they may have health issues to overcome. Second, they may be lone, okay? Because the fact of the matter is, as you age, more and more members of your family pass away. Those that were your friends for, you know, they're no longer in the circle, in the individual circles. So there is loneliness, depression, and then you're dealing with health issues. That's a lot for elderly to deal with.
Yes. And then what she told me and my friend is that she has been treated before for cellulitis in her foot, only to be discharged from the hospital and just sent right back out onto the streets. And it bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I honestly, like, I may actually try to go back out there and find her, though, so hopefully my pastor can give me an answer. And then I could seriously see whether we could connect her to a certain resource that specifically caters to her age bracket.
Well, you know what? You are definitely doing God's work over there. But
even though, dude,
look,
it is overwhelming and stressful. I'm not going to lie about that, man.
yeah, but going back, I mean, there are people who are very self entitled, and then to make it cringe worth, a whole lot of cringe. They go on social media and they talk about, well, we have to take care of these people. No, we don't. No, we don't. No one. Okay, we didn't tell you. Okay, we didn't tell you to make the decisions that you make. We didn't tell you to exercise poor choice. We didn't take a gun to your head and tell you, oh, you got to apply for social services and what have you. You chose. You who could get a job and be a responsible member of society. You decided to depend on the almighty government to take care of you.
Hey, Irby. Good evening, Irby.
Good evening, Irby.
Yeah. And I'm going to be honest about this too. So like with some of the folks I helped out and ministered to, some of them are there because of poor decisions they made. Like the one girl who I drove around to look for her mom and ended up helping out for that night that she spent time with me. Not like I said, I'm not saying her name, but all I'm going to say is that she did tell me that yes, her two sons were taken away by CPS. She battles with depression, and she's been on the streets for 6 years. But obviously, she was able to tell in my energy that I was compassionate and I was understanding. But I also referred her out to one of my facilities, which, by the way, you can check out where it is in the private chat, by the way. You can even Google it, too. You'll find it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep it there. I'm not going to openly say what it is. But the goal here is to also get her off the streets and also help her get weaned off of the Xanax addiction, and to even maybe cut ties with some of their friends that she mingles with. And then ultimately, just get cleaned up so that she actually has a chance at reuniting with her sons, whom I can clearly tell she misses dearly. So much like you say, Jose, that you put out the disclaimer in regard to how we're not condoning illicit activities. Well, I'm not condoning anybody who is going to stay in that position long term, though, because, like I said, the goal at the end of the day, man, the gospel is about embarking on a transformative journey. So, yeah, you come as you are. We meet you where you are, but it doesn't mean to stay as you are.
That is so true. That is so
Otherwise,
true.
I'm wasting my time.
Yeah. So,
but I'm not, thankfully.
Yeah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is
what's up?
Carnival Cruises and the new changes they made regarding passenger conduct.
Carnival cruises and passenger conduct. Well, much like with air flights and everything, high standard of conduct is mandatory. Otherwise, you can get off.
Okay, so actually, I'm gonna be devoting a whole stream on Monday talking about the new code of conduct the Carnival Cruise has put into effect. And then you have some people claiming discrimination against black people, okay, because they cannot play hip hop, they cannot have their fans, they cannot use their speakers and blast their music, they cannot congregate in large hallways when other passengers are trying to get to their rooms, etc., etc., etc. And and to add more cringe, people are coming to going to social media, particularly TikTok, talking about, well, um, I'm not gonna go to Carnival Cruise. I'm gonna find another ocean line so I can be as wretched as I can be.
Hmm. May I ask, what if it were hip hop that was glorifying like the Lord though? Because the gospel rap and hip hop scene is honestly booming, like Bryson Gray. I wonder whether they
Okay.
would tolerate that over music coming from somebody like Lil Kim. If that were the case,
Um.
then I would
Mhm.
see a difference.
Okay.
So,
Well, I mean, I would not know. But see, the whole thing is this, and there have been videos posted where certain people when they go on the cruises, what they do is they consume large amounts of alcohol. And you know what happens when you consume a large amount of alcohol? Your judgment is impaired. And next thing you know, you are engaging in questionable behavior, and sometimes you can get violent. And then you have somebody's, and I use the term loosely, ladies twerking, shaking their backsides and being all productive and being almost completely naked, and then they're upset because they cannot exhibit this type of behavior.
all right, well, that to me is just maybe people trying to outlaw ratchetness on a cruise ship. No matter what kind of skin color is attached to ratchetness, because you will find that across the racial spectrum. Maybe that's
Yeah,
just what they're just trying to outlaw in general, though. But if if we're like talking about like somebody who is very classy, like Dennis Edwards from the Temptations, or the Chiffrons, or Donna Summers, or Diana Ross, beautiful, classy stuff. I think that's a bit of a difference.
yeah. Let me
But if
tell you something. The music from the '70s was totally different. First of all, you're talking about people who actually were talented in their craft. And of course, there was always music, songs that were very sexually suggested. But at least, you didn't see, and I use the term loosely, ladies twerking and being almost completely butt naked and saying the most raunchy and crazy things and what have you. And what's even cringy is you have little girls 6 years old repeating the same lyrics.
yeah, man, can I tell you this, bro? Like on TikTok, I've seen elementary school age girls knowing songs like "Wop Wop" by Cardi B by heart. If you don't see a problem with that, then I don't understand your mindset.
Or, 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 imagine a little girl dressing up like a 304. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4. 4
I already seen
Really?
it though, and they're still all over TikTok. And thank God, honestly, dude, like that stuff doesn't even pop up on my news feed anymore though, because the algorithm knows clearly that my TikTok, it's all dedicated to my evangelism. It's a Christian platform, and so the algorithm is only going to push out content by Pastor Mark Driscoll or Philip Anthony Mitchell, and those are pastors that seriously don't play at all when it comes to stuff like that. That's just about as all I'm going to get, even on here too. But I'm glad that the algorithm knows better, at least in my case. Don't send me that stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ah, and
Yeah.
dude, like on a related note, bro, my niece
So
is coming
I'm gonna
over.
be the. Yes, go ahead.
No, the last thing I was just going to say is that my niece is going to come over tomorrow, though, and you already know what we're going to do.
Oh, what?
She's
Okay.
a minister too at 16 years old because she's very receptive to the gospel. I'm going to say you need to preserve your virginity. Only keep it for a man whom is truly submitted to the Lord. Don't give it up. And definitely don't sing to Cardi B's songs.
Yeah. I mean, look, let me tell you something. It's so sad that it's considered the norm to engage in carnal activity during your early teenage years. I mean, I remember during my day, basically, um, young girls was interested in, you know, playing with their dolls and what have you, and being, being with their cliques and what have you. The fact of the matter is you have young girls being misled by uh, the hyena crowd talking about, well, you got to enjoy life, you got to have sexual freedom, you got to be able to ride the CC and engage in all the fun possible. Like, so in
Yeah.
other words, you cannot have fun without engaging in intercourse. Really?
And so, what has resulted in those who are glamorizing a lifestyle of debauchery, or as they like to call it, quote unquote, fun time? All it's resulted in was actually, all they did was resulted in the following: very low self esteem, some serious self respect issues, very bad memories, and major soul wounds. Well, so much for living the fun life, huh?
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. So I think it's going to be an interesting topic when I talk about Carnival Cruise and its new guidelines and things of that nature. Of course, I'm going to be going on vacation soon. In fact, I'm taking the last 2 weeks of July off.
To
So
Georgia,
the first
Atlanta.
week, yeah. So the first
Right.
week is basically a stay vacation. The second week, I'll be in Atlanta, Georgia, attending a conference. And of course, I'm trying. And of course, I'm try, making my plans. Like for example, once I get the information about my flight, make sure that I get to the airport in plenty of time, so I don't have to rush and run like a lunatic to catch the plane, what have you. So I can relax. I'm gonna request a wheelchair, so I don't have to stand and what have you, and I can board even before the first class passengers board, which means I can get to my seat calmly without people having to rush.
Got it.
Um, and of course, I have my activities during the day. Hopefully, there'll be some free time so I could do a little sightseeing. Okay, and Um, I plan to have some wholesome fun.
Nice. Whew. Doesn't it feel so good, man, to just be wholesome and just walk in purity as best as you can?
Yes.
Feels very
Yes.
liberating, though. And maybe one of these days on my platform, we'll talk about it.
Yes.
Because at least as far
Um,
as having quote unquote fun, well, this lifestyle that me and you are living is quite fun, all right, bro. I don't feel empty. I don't
yeah.
feel like, like I'm doing something just to try to cope with something. I'm like, no, man. It truly feels very self-rewarding and liberating
Hmm.
to have some moral restraint.
Yes. And and yes, folks, you can actually have fun without consumption of alcohol. Yes, you can actually have fun without engaging in illicit sex. Yes, you can have fun without causing discomfort to other people nearby.
Right. Oh, by the way, Irby, since you mentioned Tupac and DMX, the last song I listened to by DMX is that song Slipping. You know that one? I actually like that one too. And honestly, DMX turned his life around like towards the end of his life anyway. So I actually have a lot of love and respect for DMX Simmons.
Hmm. Yeah. Irby, if you want to hit the link, it's in the chat, and then to hop on the panel, you can do so. That's assuming your Obama phone will let you do that, but that's neither here nor there.
Can I be honest about something, bro?
Yes.
Thinking about what I said, it's a little bit of some
Mhm.
TMI though, but you're going to understand what I mean. And it's for us
Okay.
men, but it's all said with love and this and that. No judgments, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
After it's been like so long since a man has touched himself, he really starts to realize how much of a slave he was to it.
Uh huh.
So
True.
he's come a long way. He starts to see like where his self-worth really is and how he had been dealing with a little bit of a self-esteem issue for quite some time.
Hmm.
So that come from well came from where we were talking about though regarding like the Carnival Cruise stuff and just probably a lot of the debauchery that comes along with it or saying stuff like that is quote unquote fun and everything. And my point about that is that once he or she has like detox from all of that stuff for a good while, whether that is like the crazy music or the crazy quote unquote turkey or touching yourself, you really start to see how much of a slave you were to it though. And who wants to be a slave? You want to be a slave
True.
to something?
Hmm.
So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But
So yeah, don't be a slave to touching yourself or twerking or drinking.
yeah, I mean, actually, there are things that you can do which are wholesome, and yes, they're fun. Okay, like for example, um, treat yourself to a nice restaurant, to a nice meal, or go see a decent movie, or go see a show, or you can just go outside, sit on a park bench, and just admire nature. There's, or if you're on, if you're on a cruise, there are activities um, which are family oriented.
Amen. Honestly, to me though, like talking about the Lord and how to properly pursue righteousness is pretty fun to me, all right.
Yes.
Or but not fun to me. I mean us. Us. It's not all about me, it's about us.
I get, I get it. Let me tell you something.
What's up?
This there is a thing in God's sight.
Can you say that again, Jose? You were breaking up. Oh boy, I think we lost Jose. I'll wait for him to come back.
Okay, I said there is a certain sanity involved when you try to. Uh, am I breaking up?
You were at first, though, but I got, I guess, the gist of what you were talking about in regard to how there's a certain level of sanity and such and such.
Yeah, basically, there's a certain sanity when you try to live a horse and life that's pleasing in God's sight.
Okay, yes, now I get you. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay. So now one of the things I want to do when we get to Atlanta, there's like a 3-hour bus tour. So I plan to spend the evening to tour the city, probably take a few pictures, maybe post it on my social media, and I'm really looking forward to my trip. And of course, the beautiful part is I'm traveling with a group. Okay, so there's a level of safety involved, and plus my union's picking up the tab. So
Well, the Atlanta metro area, bro, is ginormous. Lots of traffic, though. So it's expensive to live there, too.
Yeah. But one thing that I do know that most of the activities are going to be done in the hotel that we're going to be staying in.
Yeah, the only southern states I've been to, or I guess Texas, even though that's debatable, but the southern states I have undoubtedly been to that are undoubtedly southern are Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi.
Okay.
But I still
Wow.
have yet to make it to Georgia, though. But Atlanta is another spot where I would like to visit.
Yes. Well, I've been to North Carolina, Florida, and I've been to Texas. I guess depending, how some people look at it, some people might consider it the South because it was actually part of the Confederacy when they tried to break away from the Union.
Yeah, you also had the Fort Sumner incident that happened during the Civil War, and Fort Sumner was in South Carolina. But yes, it is.
Oh, I also forgot Montgomery, Alabama, 2.5 years ago.
Nice. And Montgomery, Alabama is another state where I'd like to check out, specifically Mobile, Montgomery, and Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And Huntsville,
Yes.
too, which is in the northern part of the state.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, let me tell you something. Now traveling can be a bit stressful, but the thing is, the key is to plan everything properly. Okay, meaning get to plan meaning give yourself plenty of time. First of all, to get into the airport, then to go through check-in, and then wait until it's time to board your plane, your flight. Okay. Now, generally, before I needed access ride, I will try to get to the I will try to get to the airport 3 hours before my flight, and this is for a domestic flight. International probably a little bit longer because you know what? I want to give myself plenty of time to go through check-in, go through security, and make sure that uh, I get to my gate on time, get to my flight on time, get to my seat so I could be comfortable.
Mhm.
There are other people that that wait until the last minute and then they're running to get to the gate, and sometimes they can miss the gate because of tardiness.
Yeah, that too. That's why, bro, I'm an early bird, by the way. I'm an early bird.
Yeah.
I will wake up early to buy myself as much time. And then also, by the way, I will be traveling probably like in the next week and a half. I'm going back to my hometown of Berkeley, California. So from Vegas to Berkeley, it's 8 hour drive. Dude, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to just go for it.
Okay.
The thing I don't really like are delays. So hopefully you don't experience any delays. And the other thing is that I don't want to arrive late at all. So I'm like, people, get up, get up, get up.
Yeah.
That's why, bro, a part of me is glad that I'm alone at the moment because I kind of like to kind of work at a pace that I would prefer to work at. So if we have like a 7 a.m. flight, bro, get up at 4 o'clock. Okay? Get up. Now. So then that
Knowing me,
to
okay,
get ready.
Yeah, knowing me for 7 o'clock clock, I'll probably be up at 3.
Okay. Me, I'll make sure that there's already some breakfast that's already prepared for us to eat something. And then obviously I don't take that. I mean, I'll already be showered and everything before I go to bed. Honestly, man, I'm ready to get to the airport. I don't take that long to get forever,
Yeah.
but get up. Let's go. Get up.
Yep.
If you
Yep.
want to sleep, sleep on the paint. Get up.
Yeah, or sleep on. Now, last year when we went to San Diego,
Mhm.
an hour and a half into the flight, we had to return to Kennedy Airport because one of the passengers became ill. So the 6 hour flight became a 10-hour flight.
I see.
So, being that there was nothing I can do, you know what I did? I took a
What?
nap.
Take a nap.
I took I
You
took a
said we
nap.
take a nap or read a book
Yeah.
or search the internet using the aircraft's Wi-Fi.
Yes. And they actually gave us free headphones, and there was a sandwich which I got for free. I guess they figured, well, being that our flight was delayed, the very least they can do is give us some free food and some free headphones so we can listen to to the entertainment. I mean, and the rest of the time I just took a nap.
That's the least that we could do. I mean, about 10 hours, so
Yeah.
that's about as long as it'll take me to get from here to at least London, UK.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I plan to visit Europe when I retire. Two cities I definitely want to visit: Madrid and London.
Same. I like to visit
Okay.
Milan, Italy, because in Milan, by the way, you can take a train into Switzerland.
Okay.
Yeah, into Zurich, Switzerland. So I would like to do that. And I already knew this stuff was going to happen, dude, because that's why I updated my passport a few months ago.
Yes. Well,
Like,
now, yeah. Well, now, if you want to, if you want to fly domestically, you need to either have the enhanced ID card or your passport.
hmm definitely, I'll have my passport well in handy. But I will be honest, the places that I'm prioritizing are Israel, Botswana, and Greenland. But I get it, things are subject to change. But I am hoping that I go to one of those three places.
Interesting.
hmm
Okay. And of course, I do plan to visit Los Angeles. Uh, Hopefully, I can visit our friend Denise, who is who is my cyber daughter, my cyber son-in-law, and my cyber grandchild.
Same. And if there's a place in Africa where you'd like to visit, where would it be?
You know something? I never really thought about Africa. Um,
I'm
that's
excited
something I'm
about
gonna
it.
have to.
Mhm.
That's something I'm gonna have to think about.
Yeah, man, no
Um,
worries. Yeah, no worries. So the place that I'm so interested in is obviously, as I said, Botswana, but there's a reason why I would love to visit, specifically Gaborone, Botswana. So the country of Botswana, it only has a couple million people. However, it is one of the most stable countries, like the most stable landlocked country in the Southern African hemisphere. So, like, much of their GDP comes from their diamond industry because they are like the second largest world producer of those beautiful diamonds, and as a result, that country is very rich and stable. The people are amazing. They're very friendly, very Christian, by the way. I like that. And then also,
mhm.
Gaborone is like an hour away from Johannesburg, South Africa. That's only if you fly there. So if I had ever had a chance to fly into Johannesburg and explore that place, yeah, I could. But then I'll have to be sure that I'm back in Gaborone, Botswana. But Botswana, bro, is a great place to go to. Very safe, like one of the safest countries. Very stable, beautiful people with a beautiful faith. So
Mhm.
Botswana is the place to go, and that's a place in Africa that I am prioritizing. And then you do have a chance to do the safari tour. But yeah, that is a place that I'd love to go there. And then plus, I probably would be maybe the first child of my mother to ever go to Africa because my mama, she's already been all over the world, by the way. That woman is just going to travel because she's been to Bali, she's been to Dubai, she's been to Armenia, she's already been to Austria, she's been to Amsterdam, she's been to Mexico, she's been to Puerto Rico and Cuba. So she's going to do her own thing, though. But me and her clearly just want to go to different places. And now she's going to Colombia.
Anywhere in particular in Colombia?
Medellin.
Oh, I've been there. It's beautiful.
Yep, Medellin and possibly Bogota.
Yes.
But Medellin is where she's going to be.
Yes, the city of eternal spring. The climate is beautiful over there
Mm-hmm.
in Medellin.
Medellin, yes, Medellin. I mean, yeah, sorry, Medellin. But yes,
Yeah.
that's where she's going though. But yeah, she's not really interested in the places where I'd like to go to though. But that's okay because me and her are pretty different anyway. But Israel was on my top list, obviously, because hey, you can either do the Bethlehem tour and who was born in Bethlehem.
Jesus.
Yep, and who was the one who ascended into heaven on the Mount of Olives?
Jesus.
And who was the one who prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane before his arrest?
Jesus.
And where is all that stuff located? In Israel.
Israel.
Ding, 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 ding. So,
Yes.
specific reason why I'm going there. Oh, wait. Then I'm going to the Jordan River. And who did John baptize in the Jordan River over there?
Jesus.
So shouldn't we all prioritize heading over there to see the amazing sights that our Lord and Savior was walking on?
Yeah, that's definitely something we should give priority to. If we have, particularly if we have the means financially to go.
Yep. If I became a millionaire, bro, and I gave you money to go there, Jose, would you check it out?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely go. I would definitely go.
Yep.
Speaking about, yes, go ahead.
No. But yeah, I wish I could do that. I would actually do that for people, though, who really want to see where the Lord and Savior toured, where he ministered to people in Galilee, where he healed people, where he healed the man with leprosy in the Gospel of Mark, too, where he did his Sermon on the Mount. Garden of Gethsemane is still there, where he was crucified at Calvary. All that's there. I'm going to go there for that.
Well,
that's all.
Speaking about coming, a certain person did state that person is planning to come over towards the end of the year. Wish to care who that person is?
Coming over?
Yes.
At the end of the year?
Yeah.
Can I have a hint?
Someone I have talked about.
Oh, hold on, Jose. I think I know. Hold on.
So I said to her,
I knew it. You see, I said it before you said something, so give me points.
Yes. So I said to her, one thing, make sure that you get yourself a coat when you come to New York on the end of the year, because New York is not exactly like the Dominican Republic. Okay, over there, if the temperature gets below 80 degrees, it's winter. Okay, so that's a big difference between when you go to a country when it's basically it's summertime, 365, and you go to a climate when the temperature is like in the 20s or 30s at the end of the year. That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, true teacher. You finally catch one of my lives. Now, this is an easy question. Who are the people who are the descendants of those Christians?
Like the early
would you like to amplify that point a little bit?
Yeah. I don't think it has to be that complicated, though. Like Jesus, he came from the tribe of Judah. And like the early Christians, such as Apostle Paul, he came from the tribe of Benjamin.
Mm-hmm. Am I breaking up again?
Nope, you sound wonderful.
Okay. Okay, so long time no see, brother.
Oh man,
Sure.
life's been lifing. How you doing?
I'm just doing fun. I'm just relaxing from a crazy day at work, dealing with someone from the circus
Mm,
that apply for services and being not being too cooperative.
uh, could be worse. You could live with them.
I
Hmm.
wouldn't. I
Mm.
wouldn't. I love my sanity. I love my sanity too much.
So, what are we talking about here? I heard
A lot of
talk
stuff.
about visiting the Holy Land.
Part of it, though, it's kind of like on one of my lists of places to travel to, along with some other places like Greenland and Botswana. But it's
Mm.
more than just that place. But yeah, it's on the bucket list.
I've been there. Was not impressed. Not because of the fact that I'm not a Christian, but more so because of what's been happening there to the people who are actually the descendants of the first Christians, which people seem to forget. I've been to Bethlehem,
Okay.
I've been to Jerusalem, and
Yes, go ahead.
yeah, those people are not being treated very well. You know, like people try to make this thing out as a conflict between Jews and Muslims, and they forget that number one, there was a sizable Christian population amongst the Palestinians. And number two, the people that we're calling Arabs today are actually the direct descendants of those people who were Jews back in the time of Jesus. Like those are the people who originally converted from Judaism to Christianity. And then later on, when Islam came about, there was a gradual conversion again from the remaining, the people who remained Jewish and the people who had converted to Christianity. Some of those people converted to Islam. So the fact of the matter is that the people that we're calling Arabs are not Arabs. They didn't migrate into the country from somewhere else. They've always been there. Those are the direct descendants of Jesus's family. And they're being horribly discriminated against because they follow a different faith. When I went there, I was in Jerusalem. That was 1991. And I met Jewish people who were adamant that they were Palestinians. They were like, no, I'm Jewish, but I'm a Palestinian. My people have always been here. We never left. We never came back. We are always here, and we are Palestinians. They were adamant. You know, um, when the Arabs came, the people that they found living there were Christians and Jews. And then, like I said, over time, there were, people converted. And some of the Jews and a lot of the Christians converted to Islam. As a matter of fact, when the Muslims came in, the majority of the people there were Christian. And yeah, I saw the way those Christians were being treated. People forget about them. They kind of sweep them under the rug. But those people who were the descendants of the shepherds in Bethlehem don't get the same rights as people who are atheists, who claim a Jewish heritage, and all the people that were being bombarded in Gaza, a lot of them are Christians. You know, one of the atrocities that happened actually happened in a Catholic church in Gaza. And they were taking refuge in a church compound. The bathroom was across the courtyard. And there was a mother, she was an older woman. She needed to go to the bathroom. And when she left the church to go across the courtyard to go to the bathroom, she was killed by sniper fire. And when her daughter ran out to help her, her daughter also got sniped. You know, there's a lot of things have happened to Christian people in Gaza and the West Bank. And that's something that people are not taking into consideration. You know, so I don't know. It's like I don't understand Christians who support the government of Israel when they're doing the things that they're doing and they're persecuting fellow Christians. I don't understand how they can be okay with that. And you can go on YouTube and you can see the way a lot of Christian pilgrims are treated by the radical, fanatic, fundamentalist Jewish people. You know, I don't want to say that this is the way all Jews are, because this has nothing to do with Judaism any more than Al Qaeda represents the average Muslim. But you can see videos of them spitting on priests and nuns and pilgrims and physically assaulting them and cursing them. And I don't understand why we continue to support a political system like this. How is this okay?
In my case, it's more that I just support the spiritual significance of that region, not so much their government, which is at the end of the day a secular democracy. The same way I won't even support even a lot of stuff that our government does as well, though. And yes, you do even have a lot of people, in fact, in Israel, who don't even accept Christ as their Messiah at all, though. But it still doesn't really like discount like the spiritual significance of that place. And then, yeah, when it comes to me, even just being a Christian, at the end of the day, I'm going to be given like the most amount of protection in Israel, or specifically Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, than I would in the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip.
But you do know that there are Christians living in the West Bank.
Yes.
Your fellow
They're
Christians.
underground for sure, because there's
They're,
actually
no, they are not underground.
Mhm.
They are not underground. This is part of the propaganda that's being told. I've been there. Okay? I've been there.
Mhm.
I had friends in college who were Christians. There's a town near Bethlehem named there are villages, entire villages in the West Bank that are Christian, still to this day. One of the best known is Beit Sahur. A very good friend of mine, his name was Ramon. He was from Beit Sahur. He's Christian.
Mhm.
The whole community was Christian. Bethlehem is a predominantly Christian community. These people are not underground. They're not in hiding. That's not true.
It's
I've
true
been
that
there.
they're inviting
True
in Gaza
teacher.
Strip, without a doubt.
Okay.
They're not in hiding in Gaza Strip because, as I said, there were Christians who were taking refuge in a Catholic church in Gaza.
Mhm.
So if there's a Catholic church in Gaza, and I'm sure it's not the only one, how are they hiding?
What's the name of this Catholic church in the Gaza Strip? I'm
I
curious.
don't know the name of it, but they were there. And this was reported. Mother and daughter taking refuge in a Catholic church killed by sniper fire. The Christians in Gaza and in the West Bank are not in hiding. They are very much visible.
Mhm.
That is not true.
True teacher, would you care to respond to the statement
Mhm.
Christians under Hamas control cannot live safely?
That's what I was thinking too.
Well, everybody, whether they're Christian or Muslim in Gaza, cannot live safely because of the Zionist regime that is killing unarmed civilians when they're lining up to get food relief. How is that okay? You're starving people to death. And when they go to get the little bit of aid that is allowed to come in, they're killed by sniper fire. How is that okay? You can go and watch the film that received Academy Award, No Other Land. I don't know if you can find it streaming online, but you should go watch that. They actually have footage of Palestinians, unarmed civilians, being shot and killed in cold blood, point blank, by Israeli settlers who were intruding on what is supposed to be Palestinian land in the West Bank. And they harass these people. They go to their homes. They kick them out of their homes. They confiscate their land. They destroy their homes. They come there with bulldozers. They destroy their homes. They come there in the middle of the night, like the KKK used to do to black people in the South. And they set their homes on fire. And there's one scene in that movie where they bulldoze these people's houses. And then, these people are like living in tents, like plastic tents. And they have a generator. And the next day, the Israeli army comes to confiscate their generator. And of course, the people are holding on to the generator, to keep them from taking it. And I think these were settlers. These were settlers, but they were being protected by the Israeli army. And they shot the guy who was holding on to the generator point blank. They killed him in cold blood. How is this okay?
True teacher,
We can't,
you are
listen, we
stating
cannot
something.
hide.
Okay.
We cannot hide behind Christian faith when your fellow Christians are being massacred.
Okay. True teacher, you are stating some serious, serious statements.
Because they're true.
Okay, my question is, what is your basis? I'm not disputing what you're saying. I'm just asking to try to find the rationale behind it.
The basis is what I have witnessed when I was there in Jerusalem, and I saw
Okay.
Palestinian youth being harassed for no reason. Teenagers just running errands to the grocery store, being grabbed by the neck by young men in the Israeli military, shoved up against the wall, slapped in the face, having their bags grabbed from them. I witnessed this with my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
What
Okay.
threat is a young teenager just with a bag of groceries? Why did he deserve that? This was in 1991, by the way. There
Mm-hmm.
was no excuse for this. This was in Jerusalem, in the old city, in Jerusalem. I witnessed this with my own eyes. I witnessed fundamental, radical, fanatical Jews marching through the Arab section of East Jerusalem, showing their might. Just like the Nazis used to do back in Germany in World War II, when they go walking in, like saying what they were saying against Jews. And by the way, for the record, I'm of Jewish descent. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's just realize how close this is. According to halakha, Jewish law, a person is Jewish if their mother is Jewish. That means that my grandfather, according to Jewish law, was Jewish. Now, had the Germans won World War II, they would have gone to all of the British colonies and rounded up the Jewish people or anyone who had Jewish ancestry. My grandfather would have ended up in a concentration camp, and we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. So that's how close my Jewish roots are. Okay? So I'm not saying this from a place of anti Semitism or hatred for Jews. I can't hate a part of myself.
Mm-hmm.
But you know me, I stand up for justice for anyone who's being persecuted. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I've been there. You can watch the documentary, like I said, No Other Land. There are other documentaries that I can share with you specifically about the Christian Palestinian community and what happened to them in 1948. These are not myths. This is not propaganda.
Okay.
I met the Christians in Bethlehem.
Uh-huh.
They will
Now,
tell you.
Okay, true teacher, how do you respond to the statement which states that those politicians are very anti-black and American over there? And
There,
aren't you talking about the terrorists over done? And
listen.
I just want to
How
give you an
would? Oh,
opportunity to
okay.
use to
Go ahead.
respond.
Ask me the question again. How would I respond to
Okay,
How
the
would you
okay,
respond
allegation?
okay,
to like the comments
okay,
though in regards to
okay.
how like the Gaza Strip is kind of packed with anti-black and anti-American sentiments? Though it is, I mean, it's not to discount that there may be some anti-black people in Israel though. But I guess what Gigi's wondering is, where would a black guy be more protected in, the Gaza Strip or Israel, or neither?
Well, there are a lot of black people in Palestine. As a matter of fact, Jerusalem is one of the places where you will see a lot of black Palestinians.
Oh,
Okay? There's also another region. It's near Jericho. It's called Riha. And I have friends who have family from, well, when I was in college, I had friends who had family from Riha. There's also, um, damn, I should have saved it. There's a Palestinian deputy group, and they're all black. Now, the way I would respond to the issue of anti blackness, listen, everywhere where there was slavery, you're going to find anti blackness. Like, Jose, you and I, we know each other because we were confronting anti-black Latinos, particularly from the Dominican Republic, who were saying very
mm-hmm.
inflammatory things against not only African Americans, but all people of African descent, to the point where there was one person that we knew who was, by all appearances, what we would classify as a black person here in the United States, who denied his African heritage to the point where he stopped showing his picture and even went as far as to join white nationalist organizations and was featured on their programs. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
As well
Look,
as a very infamous person who went viral for a racist meltdown during the pandemic.
Chivo. Yeah.
Exactly. So, listen, at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there isn't racism in the Middle East, in the Palestinian community. I've had Palestinians show me their entire ass, okay? But that does not condone murder and genocide. Do you think that everybody in the concentration camps in Europe were saints?
No.
Do you think
I
they
would
were
not. I
okay?
would not. I would not. I would not make. I would not make that assessment. But
Okay,
one
so
thing that is okay. Okay. Let me just say this point.
mhm,
Back before the state of Israel was created in 1948, there was a two-state solution. There would be an independent state of Israel and an independent state for the Palestinians. Okay, those who wanted to create their own separate state for the state of Israel was in an agreement with that. The ones that was not in agreement was the Arabs. And as
okay,
soon as the state of Israel was created, war began to
Yeah.
okay.
try to destroy the state of
So,
Israel.
Jose, what you need to understand is that
Yes.
the war didn't start in 1948. There were
Okay.
Jewish terrorist organizations, and that's why after this is all done, I'll drop in the comments the documentary. There were Jewish terrorist organizations like the Stern Gang that were going around and killing people. Okay, now let's take into consideration the fact that at that time, you're talking about a country that is already populated, heavily populated. And now you bring immigrants into the country and they want half the land when they're a minority of refugees. Look at what's happening in the Dominican Republic right now with regard to the Haitians and how Dominicans are reacting. A lot of Dominicans are reacting to the presence of Haitians coming into the Dominican Republic. Now, they haven't gone to the point where they're committing genocide, but imagine, how do you think Dominicans would react if somebody suggested that because of the crisis in Haiti, half of the land of the Dominican Republic should be given to Haitians? How do you think that would go over?
I'm sure there'll be issues. Now,
That's
one of the
putting it
points that
mildly.
okay. I need to cut in. One of the points that Gigi stressed about talking about the terrorism that's being done. I would assume she's talking about the terrorism that's being done by the Palestinians. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't know if he. Okay.
Well, I can't
Also,
really see the screen. What the
okay.
system-
Let me just
I made like
state this, and
I
then
also just I just made like a really quick point here. So like, I don't at all deny that you do have some terrible people, even within the IDF. And
The IDF is
the
terrible. What do you mean, even in? They're
But yeah,
garbage.
but
See what they're showing themselves doing on TikTok?
I've seen
They're
it.
disgusting.
I've
So what
seen
do you mean
I've,
some bad people?
I've seen like the atrocities even committed too within the IDF branches. But the concern that a lot of us have here is that it's also is a part of the Hamas constitution to eliminate the Jews and eliminate Israel at all costs. And
Well,
until that comes to fruition, there can be no peace. And that is still within the Hamas constitution that they enacted within 1987. So how can
well,
we
you
get
do realize that there has been a lot of stuff going on even before Hamas came into existence. This is not something new. You see, people are talking about Hamas, October 7th. People are not realizing that the violence has been ongoing since 1948. It's not new. So you do not get young people in the prime of their lives deciding to blow themselves up for no reason. You got to pull back and ask yourself, why would a young man in good health in the prime of his life decide that the only option for him in life is to strap a bomb to his back and kill as many people as he can? That's not normal.
no?
So that means that something had to happen to that person for them to feel like they had no options in life, nothing to look forward to, no reason to live, and therefore he's going to kill himself and he's going to take as many of the people who are his enemies out with him. Now, I'm not by any means suggesting that that's a solution. It's not a solution. But something happened to drive them to that point. The first time I went to Egypt was 1988. Okay? 1988 was also the first intifada. This was an uprising of the Palestinian people living under occupation. Now, you want to talk about terrorism? You know what their weapons were? Rocks. They didn't have, this was not an armed struggle between two equally armed combatants. You had the Israelis and you had the Palestinians with rocks and slings. The same kind of sling that David used to kill Goliath in the Bible, that culture still survives. Guess who lives that culture? The Palestinians. You know why? Because those people that you read about in the Bible are their direct ancestors. Those people never left the land. Those people are the descendants of the ancient Jewish population that was there. The only thing that changed is that they converted. When the state of Israel was created, they co-opted the Palestinian portion of the population that was still Jewish, and they disenfranchised everyone else. But they are all still the descendants of the ancient population, and DNA confirms it. Something that I was saying decades before DNA was a thing. I was saying this back in the 1980s, that the people that we're calling Palestinian Arabs now are the descendants of the Canaanites who were the Israelite people 2,000 years ago. They're still there. That's who they are.
Mhm.
So understand that the violence against them has been continual since 1948. And in 1988, that was the first time they picked up, that was the first time that en masse they started fighting back.
Mhm.
And all they had to fight with were rocks. Yet and still, the response of the Israeli government was to deal with them with live ammunition, breaking young boys' hands with rocks, fracturing their arms with rocks, picking them up off the street for no reason, whether they were involved in protests or not, and just spiriting them away to prison with no charges and no recourse to legal counsel. This is an apartheid state. And I'm not saying that lightly. Like I said, I have been there. I've seen it. So if you go to the Holy Land, by all means do go. But you know what you got to do too? Go and speak to your fellow Christians in the West Bank and ask them what their lives are like. Go spend some time with them and see what life is like for them.
I'd be really happy to
Okay.
do so.
Okay, excuse me, gentlemen.
What's up?
I need at least 5 minutes uninterrupted. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll mute
Okay.
myself.
First of all, if you really want to break this down, how this whole process, the conflict began, it goes way before 1948. Okay, actually, it all started way back in the Old Testament when you have Isaac, that was the son of Abraham, who's Sarah, and you have Ishmael, who was the son due to his encounter with his slave. So I will submit to you that issue goes back even before that. Number one. Number two, if we're going to condemn the terrorism that's happening by the Israeli government, we need to apply that same standard to Hamas. We need to apply that same standard to any organization that's killing innocent people, whether they be Palestinians or whether they be Jewish or whether they be Christian. Okay. I will want to see the evidence in order to make an objective appraisal. But if we're going to condemn, and I'm not saying that there's not terrorist acts done in the name of the Israeli government, I'm not going to condemn it. But if we're going to condemn them, then we have to also have to condemn whenever any other groups kill innocent Israelis.
Okay, may I respond?
Sure.
Okay. So your first point about Jacob and Isaac, or the two brothers, Ishmael and I forget his
Isaac.
brother,
Isaac.
Ishmael and Isaac. You're not listening to what I'm telling you, Jose. Those people that we call Palestinian Arabs are not Arabs. The story of Ishmael and Isaac is the story talking about the Arabs in what we call Saudi Arabia today. The Palestinians are not Saudi. Their DNA, and you can look this up, the DNA evidence shows that they are descended from the native population that was living in what was called in the Old Testament Canaan, that later became the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. They have been there in that area since the Stone Age. They've been there since the Neolithic period. That's who they are. The only thing that changed is, like I said, there were conversions. They converted. They did not come from Saudi Arabia. And once again, a lot of Palestinians are Christians. That's the part that everybody keeps ignoring, because they've bought into this propaganda that this is a war of religion and it's always been like this for thousands of years, Ishmael and Isaac. There are no Christians in Saudi Arabia. Okay? The Christian communities that were there at the time of Prophet Muhammad converted to Islam. So those Christians in the West Bank and Gaza did not migrate in from Arabia. They are not Arabians. Their DNA says that they are from where they are from. And even furthermore, they're related to the Jews that are still there. The Jews from Europe, they have, on the maternal side, a significant amount of European admixture from women that they married when they went into northern Italy, who converted to Judaism. And then from there, they moved into, further inland into Europe. They're related to the Palestinians. And of all the Palestinian groups, the ones who are closest related to the ancient Hebrews are the Christians and the Samaritans. The Samaritans are also still there. The Samaritans that Jesus talked about, the Good Samaritan, yeah, they're still there. And where do they live? Amongst the Palestinians. A sizable amount of them lived always amongst the Palestinian, Christian, and Muslim areas. I forget which town it is. I think it's Hebron. I'm not sure. They still have their festival. They still have their religious festivals on Mount Gerizim, because there was that split between the Jews and the Samaritans. The Jews believed that Jerusalem was the place for the temple, and the Samaritans believed that it was Mount Gerizim. They still have their ceremonies there on Mount Gerizim every year, where they sacrifice and they give burnt offerings. They're still there. Okay, so that's one thing. We need to reprogram our minds and dispel this myth that Palestinians are Arabians that came in there with the Islamic armies. No, that land was full of people. And like I said, when the Arabs invaded, when the Muslims invaded, I should say, they found a population in the land that was predominantly Christian. What do you think happened to those Christians? They didn't kill them. They remained there. And over time, gradually, they converted to Islam. And a portion of the Jews who remained also converted to Islam. So if we're talking about people who convert, then that means, who are they really? They're the same people. They've always been the same people. So when the British come in the 19th century, who they found there were Christians, Muslims, and Jews. But then you started having Jewish refugees come in to the country, and instead of having one country for everyone, where everyone's rights are protected by the law, You want to give a minority group of refugees half of the land? So then where if you give them half of the country, where the rest of the people going to go? And by the way, they're not being compensated for the land that they lose. Let me ask you something. You have your own property. You own your own property in Parkchester where you live, do you not?
Correct.
Now, we all know without a shadow of a doubt who the land that Parkchester is built on originally belonged to. Do we not?
Yeah,
We know that there was a native
we do.
population here
Uh,
and they were exterminated, they were genocided, they were moved out in order to make way for the 13 colonies, which would eventually become the United States. We all know this. We all know that we are living on stolen land. We know this. Now, let me ask you something. If someone came, if they passed a law, let's say Mamdani, he's the guy that everybody loves to hate right now. Mamdani becomes mayor of New York, and he declares that we're going to give Parkchester back to the Algonquins or whoever was the Native American group that owned that land way back when. And, the rest of you guys, you have your co-ops or whatever, but listen, you still have the rest of New York City. As a matter of fact, you got a whole country. Move there. How do you think people would react?
not very well.
Not very well. And they would react that way because, you know what? They're human beings.
Mhm.
And human beings are going to react the way human beings do.
Okay.
So why is it when we're talking about this situation of this proposal in 1948, why is it that we forget that the Palestinian people were human beings, just like the rest of us? And they had the same human emotions that all of us have, and they reacted the same way that any human being would react, placed in the same situation. You know who else was promised that land by the British during World War One? This goes way back before 1948. You ever heard of Lawrence of Arabia?
No. What I'm gonna ask you to do, to teacher, if you can DM me the links to all the information so I can
Okay,
review it myself, and then
I'm
I
going
and then I
to.
can make and then I can make an objective appraisal,
Okay,
logical appraisal.
I will say this. Okay, because you're obviously not well versed in this, so I will tell you, and then you can fact check everything that I said. During World War II, you really haven't heard of Lawrence of Arabia?
I've heard movies about him. I didn't
Okay,
know such a person existed.
he was a real person.
Okay.
Okay, now what was happening? That whole story, Lawrence of Arabia, he was a real person. That happened during World War One. At
Hmm.
that time, the entire Middle East was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, or the Ottomans, who, their home base was Turkey, what we call Turkey. Well, it was Turkey then too. But the Turks were on the side of the Germans, and which is why, coincidentally, there's a large Turkish population in Germany. Fun fact. But the Europeans, for a very long time, had wanted to get rid of the Ottoman Turks, the Turkish Empire, because they were a threat to Europe and because they made it difficult for Europeans to get to certain trade routes. I mean, you and me, we're Caribbean people. The reason why we exist goes back to the Ottoman Empire. It was because of the Ottoman Empire and the fact that Christian Europeans didn't have access to the trade routes in the East that they wanted to. We're not even going to go back and talk about what the fuck happened during the Crusades. That goes way back. Just saying, there's history there. And a lot of the antagonism has been instigated from one direction to another. But I digress. Because Britain knew they didn't have the manpower to defeat the Turks, they went to the Arab-speaking populations in Arabia and in the Eastern Mediterranean, in what we now call, the Eastern Mediterranean, the Levant, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and what was then Palestine. And they said, if you help us defeat the Turks, we will give you independence. You will have your own countries. You will not be under the domination of a foreign empire anymore. At the same time, they're telling that to the Palestinians and the Arabic-speaking people in that region. They're telling the Zionists in Europe, we're going to give you a Jewish state in Palestine. So you see how this is like, right from the get-go, there's a whole lot of fuckery and foolishness going on here. And the British, when shit got too hot, they dropped the whole ball. They dropped it like a hot potato. And they let just chaos happen. Now, to the other point of terrorism, I don't condone terrorism from anyone. And all of the people who are pro-Palestinian, all of us have said time and time and time again that we don't condone what happened on October 7th. We didn't condone the suicide bombers. We didn't condone that. But we can understand how people get to a point where they're so desperate that they're willing to do barbaric things out of the hurt and the desperation that they feel. Because once again, we forget that they're human beings just like us. You don't have to go overseas to see how human beings react when their relatives are killed. You live right there in the Bronx, like I did. We know how shit goes down in the street. What happens? You do something to my homeboy, what do I got to do?
Mhm.
Human beings are human beings no matter where you go. And the reason why we're in this fucking mess right now is because those people in Europe and those governments refuse to acknowledge the fact that those people there in Palestine were human beings. You're going to have declarations about carving up land. Were the Palestinians included in these talks? No. They just imposed this idea on them and expected them to acquiesce. At no point ever, the Balfour Declaration, there were none of the native people in that meeting when they decided that they were going to do this thing and create a Jewish homeland in Palestine, in an area that is heavily populated with towns, with villages, with cities. This was not an empty land. There were people living there. There were vibrant, prosperous cities living there with commerce and farming. All right. These were not just a bunch of people running around wild in the desert, and the land was never an empty desert. It never was. So, all of the ideas that we have are propaganda that have been fed to us by Israel and the United States. And the reason why Israel is there is to do the dirty work of the United States in that area. There's a reason why all of this stuff is going on. The United States and England and France have been in the Middle East for decades, creating nothing but upheaval and chaos. So when we look at all of these militant Islamic fringe groups, you know how that started? That all goes back to Iran. And you're old enough, because you're older than me. You remember what happened in 1979 with the
Yes,
hostage situation.
exactly.
The roots of that go back to the 1950s. Iran was a democracy with a president that was elected by the people. But he had a really weird idea that the Iranian people should actually have control over their oil resources. And that didn't sit very well with the British or the Americans. So they instigated a coup. They dethroned him, they deposed him, and in his place, they put the Shah. They put him on the throne, and he was a dictator.
Okay.
The only ones who were organized enough to resist the Shah were the Islamic clerics. And so when the revolution happened, it comes from the Muslim clerics because they were the only ones who were organized enough to put up a resistance. The United States was backing Saddam Hussein, who was doing their dirty work and fighting a war against Iran. And then years later, when they figure, Saddam is feeling himself, they turn on him and they depose him. Oh, he's a dictator. You knew that all those years when he was fighting for you against Iran. You know what he was doing to the people in Iraq. But we went in there under the pretext of weapons of mass destruction, which we now know was a lie. And we bombed them back to the Stone Age.
Excuse me, teacher. I'm gonna need for you to wrap this up, please, because this stream is going on for like 2 hours. Generally, I try to keep it no more than 2 hours. Can you kindly wrap this up, please?
Absolutely. I'm just saying, listen, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And what is going on now is barbaric, and there's no excuse for it. You
Mhm.
don't, listen, none of us are angels,
Okay.
okay? But that doesn't mean that you go and you treat people in an inhumane way. And as people who are Christians or of any faith, I think you need to ask yourself, would Jesus approve of what the Israeli government is doing and has been doing to these people? What would Jesus do?
I would say that Jesus would not be in agreement with people hurting people, whether that be Israeli or Palestinian or anyone else.
Exactly. Exactly. So for all of these fundamental Christians who are turning a blind eye to what Israel is doing right in front of our eyes, and we can't say like we don't know what's going on because we can see it. This is worse
Mm-hmm.
than what was happening in Vietnam. And we all put an end to that war. It was mass protests of the people that ended the war in Vietnam because for the first time, we had news cameras that was showing what the American army, what the American military were doing to the civilians in Vietnam. Why don't the Palestinian people deserve the same kind of sympathy? They're human
Okay.
too.
Okay. So, well, first of all, I just want to thank you for hopping on. Um, Obviously, we're not going to be in complete agreement. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. Um, like I said, please submit your links and whatever so I can
Listen, I can
look
give you tons of stuff and
and
you can look it
also
up too. This shit ain't hidden. All you got to do
I'm
is
not
do the research it.
okay. Well, like I said, get, DM me the location, the site, and I will do the research. I mean, and because one thing about me, and I think you know about me in all this time, I try to be fair.
Yep. I'll send you, well, I can't bombard you with a whole lot of stuff like right now,
Well, you know what?
but
You know
I
what?
will give you, listen,
Okay, okay. Let's just focus on maybe 2 or 3 different sites, and then I'll do the research. And then if I need more,
I'll give you some documentaries to look at.
okay,
I'll give you some things and listen, you can do the research yourself. It's very easy to do, but you see, you never knew about this. So you never thought to go and look at it because you were told one thing and you believed it just like I was. I didn't know any of this stuff until I started speaking with the people and until I went there myself and I saw it. I didn't know. I grew up
okay,
just like everybody else believing what, the party line told me.
okay.
But the information is out there. But you see, most people, like I said, they don't know. So it never occurs to them to question whether or not the standard line that they were being told by the United States government, by the Israeli government, and by our churches was actually true or not. You didn't even realize, I'm sure, until I spoke to you just now, that there was a sizable Christian community of Palestinians.
Actually, actually, I was aware there were Palestinians that were Christian.
Okay,
I
so
was
let
aware.
me ask you something really quickly. Where do you
Okay.
think those Christians had come from? What do you think their ancestral lineage was? Or did you just never occurred to you to think that deep?
To be perfectly transparent, while I knew there were Palestinians that were Christian,
Hmm.
okay, to be perfectly transparent, I did not know fully where they came from.
Exactly. And you're no different than most people because we just don't think that deep. It's like we have the programming that we've been given, and oh, Christians, oh, yeah, but we don't, we don't follow that to the logical conclusion of, where did they come from? Bethlehem. And there's Christians there. There's churches. There's Christian churches. When we go and we do these pilgrimages, how did these get there? We don't think that deep.
One can speculate, but I don't think speculation is a good thing to do. But in any case, I do need to start to wrap this up because January I try to keep it no more than 2 hours because let's keep it real. People, a lot of people don't have the time to actually sit through an entire live. You know, they'll chop it down into several bits. That's the reality. People
Yeah,
have a life.
I understand. But I decided to sacrifice my beauty sleep because I've been wanting to support your lives for a long time, and it just so happens that they're usually around the time that I'm falling asleep. But this was a
Okay.
coincidence. I didn't know that this topic was what was gonna be,
Well,
on the
actually,
table.
it's called open discussion, so we can talk about anything and
Yeah.
everything. So when it comes to certain things, um, I don't talk about it a great deal because it can create a lot of emotional feelings, and there are people who are not able to listen to stuff that they may disagree without getting emotional. Like there's some things I disagree, but at least I'm willing to look at the information itself.
Yep. And I'll send you the DNA stuff. I'll send you the documentary with the Christians and anything else that I have. I will send that to you too. And the rest of it, you can, like I said, you can research it. It's not hard to find,
Okay.
especially on YouTube. It's all over YouTube. The information is all there, but you don't look for unicorns if you don't know that exist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and as far as the reason why, it's basically because when I had done streams like say 8:30, 9 o'clock, and not too many people watching.
Yeah.
Okay, at least live. So you have to like try to twerk it to try to find a time where the maximum audience. And plus, I do get an audience from people from the West Coast. So
hmm
it's like,
Oh, that's
and
oh that's a consideration. Yeah.
yeah, and plus, that's another thing that to take into consideration. The fact of the matter is, I'm not young, so for me to stay up this late, at times it is, it is a struggle. Okay,
Well, listen,
because
at
I'm
least you're
not
putting
young
out
anymore.
regular content on your channel. My channel hasn't hardly gets any love, you know. So kudos to you for doing that. You're pretty consistent.
Well, and believe me, I don't, and other than I'm a child of God. And I just look at it this way. You know what? They're the ones that have the problem, not me. I'm gonna stay in my lane. I'm gonna try to be the best version of myself. Those who do not like me, well, you have the issue, not me.
No, but I mean, like, as far as you putting out regular content on your channel, you're pretty consistent. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I wish that I was able to do the same thing on my channel. So
Well,
kudos to you.
let's keep it real. A lot of the people in our groups have not been able to produce content on a regular basis. Like for example, Radical does stuff once in a while. Ramon hasn't put out any content in months. Denise has not put any contact at all. No, for okay. Brota have not posted a lot of content. So I mean, people have lives. Okay,
hmm
people have responsibilities, and not everyone can actually do what I do. I mean, basically, I'm just a person that's 5,000 years old that has time and energy to produce content. That's all.
Well, one day we'll take an expedition to Dominican Republic and see if we can track down our friend Chivo,
You
the
know
albino
what?
Sasquatch.
Well, first of all, when it comes to that individual, and just us, and in the future, we try not to refer to anyone specifically because I don't want to give them any shine. I mean, we're talking to a person that wants to make the DR white again, but this person is not white.
Yeah, and that's how we met,
And
from that
actually,
kind of
yeah,
illogic.
yeah. So and actually, I refer to them as the circus because they act like a bunch of clowns,
Yeah,
and we have dealt with. We've been dealing with these clowns for years. Okay,
yeah,
look, you have
and
been. You've been through the mud quite a bit.
yeah.
Rod has been through the mud. Denise has been through the mud. Brot has been through, and
Hmm.
even even me. And basically, I'm one of the least confrontational YouTube content creators out there, and I have had streams devoted about me calling me everything but a child of God.
Yeah, and now the pendulum is swung the other way, and now I'm defending Latinos against racist Black Americans. So you can't make this shit up, man. Welcome to planet Earth.
Look, no, that's why I called it the circus because they act like a bunch of clowns. I mean, really,
But
and and of
that's
course,
human beings for you, unfortunately.
yeah, and of course, in the circles that I deal with, that I circulate with, I I am different areas. Not only I'm with I deal with the Latino side, some of the African American creators, but also the mixed groups
Mhm.
like your golden goddesses and your Herbies and reality. Okay,
Mhm.
and of course they have their point of view. Do I agree with everything? No, but is allowed to to voice their point of view. The only stipulation: let's be mutually respectable.
Mhm. Hey, I dropped a video yesterday. Speaking of, information, you can get some information from that video if you look in the pinned comments.
Okay,
I have a video of someone doing a breakdown there too. But
okay,
I will definitely send you some materials that you can get started with.
okay, and fine. And let's
All
just
right.
say we're not going to agree on everything on this topic, but at least I'm going to look at the evidence.
Well, you know me, I don't make shit up. I'm gonna give you facts. I'm not gonna give you opinions and making things up. If I open my trap, it's because I can back up my bullshit always.
Yeah,
So
and
that's what I'm
yeah,
gonna
and
be
I think
giving you.
yeah, and you know me, I try to be fair and unbiased.
Hmm. All right, Jose, go get your beauty sleep.
Yeah, thank you for stopping by. Have a good night.
All righty, peace.
Okay, so this was it. Okay, so do I need to drop you, or are you able to drop yourself?
Oh, well, I want to hear what you say when you close out, because if I drop
Okay,
out, then I don't hear. So I want to hear your
okay,
finishing remarks,
okay,
and then you can
okay.
just drop me.
So obviously, the stream went into a different direction that I did not anticipate. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with healthy, respectable exchange of views and beliefs, even some beliefs that we may not necessarily agree. I have never been a person um not willing to listen. I'm willing to listen to all points of view. I may not agree to all points of view. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, this is not an echo chamber here. This has never been an echo chamber, and it will never be an echo chamber. Obviously, there's going to be points that we're not going to be in a full agreement. But as long as we agreeable when we disagree, that's fine. I will be doing a impromptu live tomorrow, but we will not discuss this topic. Um, I think we discussed it enough, but I will
I put a
definitely
lot on your plate, and you got to digest it.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you gave me like a 10-course meal, and there's no way I can finish it in one.
But Jose, what about desserts?
I'm struggling. Look, I'm struggling to finish the first, second two courses. Never mind dessert.
Well, listen, you can always put the rest in the doggy bag and put it in the fridge. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess so. I think I have enough. I think I have enough for a week. But
Yeah.
but a huge shout out to everyone in the chat and those who appear on the panel. Thank you, True Teacher. Thank you, Georgia. So the bottom line is that when it comes to this conflict, there's going to look there are different things to consider. We're not always going to agree, but let's be morally consistent. That's all. That's all I'm going to say on that. I'll be doing a impromptu live tomorrow, but it's going to be much earlier, probably 9 o'clock. Um, I'm not going to have anything scheduled. I'm just going to just it's just going to be a chill stream. I'm just going to talk what's on my mind when I'm going to talk with it, just address this topic. And of course, the playback gang, you can enter your comments. Try to keep it respectable. And yes, we know that many of us have very strong views when it comes to both sides of the conflict over there in Israel. All I ask people, let's be mutually respectable if we disagree. Okay. And of course, I'm going to close the same way that we always closed here. We must do everything possible to avoid the presence of the mentally and intellectually challenged, because if we fail to do so, we will be infected by their stupidity and massive insanity. This has been another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron, and I just want to wish all of you a very wonderful weekend. Take time to relax, take care, and peace.